Welcome to the Next Gen Podcast. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Bryson Wright and Alex Winton. They got next, so let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome in to the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. And another really big weekend, some different kind of Grizzlies news this week. We got to start with the biggest news being the fact that Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be playing for Team USA this summer in the Philippines in the FIBA World Cup. It's going to be one of the first times that a Grizzlies player has had a chance to go and be on Team USA. Really haven't had another person have a chance to do that in a while. And I think it's going to be good for his career too. I think it's going to be interesting to see him play with those FIBA rules. I think that's the thing I'm the most excited about, because there's a little bit of difference in the goaltending rules. There's no 3-second violation on defense. So it's one of those things to where you might get to see some really crazy stats from him. They also played a lot more through the post last year, or in the last Olympics, whenever they played in the FIBA World Cup ball. So I think there's a chance that Jaren gets a lot more involved kind of on both sides of the ball when it comes to FIBA. And I think, obviously, I think it was a good pickup for Team USA. And just congratulations to Jaren. It's a huge honor to get selected to play for your country. And it might even put him on track to be on the Olympic team when the Olympics come around too.
Yeah, big congrats. It was kind of, I'm going to say surprise, because I kind of not expected, but I forgot about it, like the FIBA thing. So, and I forgot, because I remember, I forgot what episode it was. We talked about it where Kerr was talking about he wanted like Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson on the team for Team USA. So I was like, okay, well, it's probably something was gonna happen, but I forgot about the FIBA thing. But once I saw that with him, I think it was him and they said him and Ingram were gonna commit to it. So I think Jaren is I think they got like 6 or 7 players already on the team or that have committed, quote unquote. I think he's like one of 2 bigs. I think the other big is like Bobby Porter right now. They'll probably have Jaren play not I'm gonna say different style of basketball, but like he's gonna be because Steve Kerr is the coach, so I'm pretty sure they're gonna run more of a motion type offense. It's gonna put Jaren in, I'm not gonna say uncomfortable spots, but it's gonna put him in stuff that he wants to work on. We're gonna talk about obviously his big interview he just had with Paul George, but I think one of the things he did mention on there was talking about playmaking. And basically talking about like how like he wants to improve on that, and then you kind of can't really improve on that just by watching. You have to kind of go through it. So I think him being in a spot where he's not going to have to be the main guy to score. He's probably going to be more used in that Golden State type of way anyway, where you're running a lot of dribble handoffs and making reads.
The Draymond Green role basically is what he's going to be doing.
Yeah, the Draymond Green role basically is what he'll be in Team USA or for FIBA World Cup. And so I think that's really good for him. Obviously, because he is healthy too. Because I remember him doing it similar, like he was part of the FIBA team, but not he didn't make the cut. But it's like when they were doing it, I think it was like his second year, but it was a while ago.
Yeah, so I remember there are some pictures of him from then, like in some Team USA gear, but he never actually made the team.
Yeah, he didn't make the team, but he was there at the camp. So, I definitely expect him to really have a good season. Like this is gonna be good for him, and I'm not gonna bearing health, obviously, hopefully. This is good that he gets an off season to not only work on his game, but then get to try the stuff in the games, have game reps with it. And also, I think it'll help him work on his conditioning, which I think is a big thing for him. Not only, and not just him, but for everybody, but for him in particular, especially if you want to go deep, make a deep playoff run, you need to be in the best shape. And I think this is going to kind of keep him in shape throughout the whole summer. Because I forgot how long it goes for, but it'll go for like a month or so. So, I think it's gonna be good for Jaren. I really think he's gonna ball out, like you said, especially with the rules. I think it's gonna be a big thing for him. I'm ready to listen because I think obviously, he's the only Grizzly we got that's gonna be playing any type of basketball. So like at least from obviously our roster perspective, we have summer league, but like one of our guys,
Santi Aldama is gonna be playing for Spain.
Oh yeah, that too. Good
point.
We
will get to see. We might even get to see Jaren versus Santi probably in like a final, because Spain is actually ranked number 1, I'm pretty sure, right now in the FIBA World Cup rankings. So we might get this. Could be interesting. Well, I'm not going to say it's quite going to be like the Kobe and Powell thing because they're not that big of players, but
Yeah.
I always think it's interesting whenever you take players that come from the same team, especially when it's like one is kind of like I feel like Jaren's kind of one of Santi's mentors. So it's gonna be
Yeah.
kind of cool to see them kind of go against each other at like basically, if not the most competitive stage of basketball, like it's up there with the finals. If you're talking about like a finals in FIBA World Cup or the Olympics, it's the highest level of basketball you can play. So I think it's going to be good. I think it's something that can be good for Santi Aldama too,
Oh yeah,
which
for sure.
I think both of them are going to really help from this. And then I also say just going through the rest of the team, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Brandon Ingram, Bobby Portis, and Austin Reeves. So some interest. It's an interesting team. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how all the different because obviously these are all players that on their own team are basically like the first option for a lot of these guys. Like for Jalen Brunson, for Anthony Edwards, like they're basically the first option. Macau kind of blossomed into that on the Nets. So it's going to be interesting to see how they all kind of come together. And then you also have Jaren, who is going to be the best defender on the team, obviously defensive player of the year and everything like that, but also to see how they get him involved on offense. I think it's going to be interesting just because there's a lot of guys that can do a lot with the ball in doing in this. And we can talk about it a little bit more when we get to the next thing, when we talk about Jaren going on the podcast with Paul George. But he talked about when he played AAU and how the teams were so good, all he really had to do was block shots.
Yep.
We might see some of that in the FIBA World Cup when you got a guy like Brandon Ingram, professional scorer, Jalen Brunson, professional scorer, Anthony Edwards. Like these are dudes that they score. Like that is what they do. They're scorers. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of use him on offense. I think that would be the biggest question. But we know for a fact he's going to bring everything on defense, and that's really probably where he's going to make the biggest impact.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, it's just funny because I won't say he's in his true role, but like Jaren, like he's used to this. He used to not having to be the guy on offense, and that's not a bad thing because I think that makes him as what the player is now because he's so good at doing the little stuff and things that impact winning. So you do that along with the scoring, that makes you a top tier player in the league, which is why he's on this team. It's not because he's, like he's one of the best players in the league, obviously, like one of the top 40, 50 names in this league. Obviously, and one of his, so like, and obviously the best defender, like you said, obviously being a defensive player of the year. So like for him, his game is what works for modern FIBA basketball. Like he can switch 1 through 5. You know what I mean? Like he can play on the perimeter on offense and play on the inside on offense. Like he does everything that you need for a big if you're going to compete for like Olympics and stuff like that. So I'm definitely interested to see how he gets used in that whole system and whatever.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. And then the other thing I'll say is, like we said on defense, there's not going to be any. I'm going to see how the FIBA rules when it comes to goaltending, if he's actually going to change his approach at all. If you don't know, in FIBA basketball, once it hits the rim, it's basically a live ball. So if it bounces off the rim, you can go up and swat it off the rim. And I feel like it's one of those things where you play basketball your whole life, like not being able to do that, even from like, because he was probably big enough to do that in high school if you really wanted to. But I think it's going to be interesting to see, like, if he actually goes through and tries to like retrain his brain to be like, that's okay. Because that's something that, like, even if you're playing on a park, like, nobody's going to do that. Like, if you do that at the
Yeah.
park, they're going to try to kick, they're going to be like, what are you even doing? Like they might not let you play back on the court again if you do something like that. So it's just so interesting how like in international basketball that's so normal, but over here like doing that in elementary basketball. I mean, obviously you can't really get up there, but it's like, man, you can't do that. Like you're trying to go up and grab the ball off the rim. Like it's just it's so different from what you're used to. So I think that's something that's going to be interesting to watch too. But I'm really excited that he's actually going to get a chance to go over there and play for Team USA. Like I said, it's like the biggest honor you can basically have as a basketball player is getting chosen to play for your country and everything like that. And for Team USA, nonetheless, which I mean, the expectation also there's also going to be a huge expectations. Like I'd say this is probably like the biggest expectations he's probably had in his career because like maybe it would be bigger if it was like the Olympics, but for Team USA, it's like if you don't win the gold, it's a failure. You know, even with the Grizzlies this year, people weren't really like people have never said like, oh, you got to win or it's a failure. Team USA, you come back with anything but the gold medal, you might as well not even come back. Like you might as well stay over there. You don't get the gold medal. Like that's really how people that's how they treat the USA basketball team, man. Like I know I was a little kid back in the day, but I remember going back and looking like those Redeem team, before all that, like 2003, 2004. Man, they were talking so bad about LeBron and Carmelo and all them boys for losing that. So hey, look, there's going to be a lot of pressure because if you don't get the gold, they will come after you. It's not a question. We've seen it happen before. Even last year, I think it was a couple years ago when they lost to Nigeria in one of those like open around games. Man, I'm telling you, they don't play about Team USA. This is supposed to be our sport. This is like one of the only sports that started in America. Like you got to get the gold, man. That's just how it is. You got to get the gold.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm laughing over here. But if y'all watch it on YouTube, I'm laughing because that is true. Because I especially now with Twitter, and the first time they lose, even if they're down like 10 at halftime, so like some team they supposed to beat, it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be very funny. A lot of slander. I mean, it's gonna be, obviously the jokes is gonna be had if they lose. But again, I don't think they will. Depend on other teams. Obviously the roster has to be shaped out more. Like there's not, I think there's 12 spots, so they still got a few names to still get. But like they should win. But like, yeah, I mean, I think Jaren will be fine. Like, I don't. I mean, obviously there's expectation, but I mean, I think he's grown into that. I mean, obviously we're gonna get into it, but like he's ready for that. Like I mean, it's just I'm not really worried about him not being ready for that pressure because he's a big dude who always says like basically like he whoever when you're in that position, much is required of you. So I'm not really worried about Jaren, going over there and balling. I think he's gonna be fine. I'm just hoping he's healthy. Again, that's all. With any player we got, I just hope
Yes.
Santi too. Please come out of this healthy. I don't care about nothing else. Just come out of this healthy. That's all I care about. Don't get hurt, please. That's all I care about. Just come out of this healthy, and everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the biggest thing too. I think that's one of the bigger concerns really when it comes to Team USA stuff is like injuries and stuff like that. So hopefully, no injuries for anybody and everybody can come out, injury clean and everything like that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. The rest of the world is catching up when it comes to the FIBA World Cups and everything like that. So I mean, when you look at just all the talent in the league already from across just the entire world, really, at this point. Can't even really say a country. Because you go like Luca in Slovenia, we got Wembanyama coming over now from France, and already tons of really good guys like Jokic, obviously in the finals, which we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But I mean, Giannis, like you could go on and on with the international players now. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how all that works out. I'm really excited though. Good to have some more great basketball in the summer. Already going to have the WNBA Summer League, just even more basketball packed in the summer. So it's just going to be an awesome summer for basketball in general. But continuing to talk about Jaren, we do have to talk about Jaren going on the podcast with Paul George, also now known as Podcast P, apparently, which I learned. Which awesome name for the podcast, Paul George. That's perfect name, man.
Yeah,
Going off the pandemic P, kind of switch it up a little bit. It's a little bit better like this. Maybe playoff P too. There's a lot of different stuff, but I really enjoyed hearing Jaren on his podcast because I feel like whenever you can get like real quotes in the media, like in media availability and after games, but you can just tell like when players go on these podcasts and they're talking to like other dudes that are like their peers, like you can just tell he seemed much more comfortable. He was more talking like he was just, talking to a couple people more than, talking to media availability. So I feel like it was a little more candid. He got to be more of himself. And I think he got to elaborate on a lot more stuff. And he talked about a lot of interesting stuff. I think the first thing we got to talk about is he did talk about the Lakers series and how he feels like them getting humbled like that. And especially talking about how they lost by 40 and, got beaten game 6. And that's something that's going to sit with them the whole summer. And I think it might even be one of the reasons why he's doing Team USA is like trying to get that bad taste out of your mouth a little bit too. But he talked about that, and then Dez went on Twitter and kind of echoed that and talked about, both of them kind of feel like that they got to spin the block and everything like that and come back. And he said he hopes he gets another chance at LeBron. They talked about maybe he'll retire, but yeah, that's basically what he said. And I think it could be good for him too. They talked about the whole Dylan Brooks and LeBron thing too. I thought that was pretty funny. Jaren saying, he's old, but they still beat us basically, and I thought that was pretty funny too. So it was a good podcast overall. So if you haven't checked that out, I would say check that one out. It is about 2 hours though, so it's definitely a commitment if you want to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, I started watching it right because I knew it was kind of. I remember the announcement. I think it was last few days ago they had the announcement. I was like, okay, like I knew because I watched the pod. Like I keep up with podcasts. Be like they actually had some good guests on there. Like for real. Like they had DeMar.
They had
on
Asia Wilson, I know too.
Yeah, last week. Yep, saw that too. Asia Wilson. So they have good guests on there. So like, and they be talking about good stuff. Because Paul's really cool. Like he's real cool, chill, and obviously his co-host are too. I will say his co-host to talk about the Lakers thing, Jackie Young. He's on Jaren's head for calling LeBron old because like LeBron again, it was just funny because I think he is a Lakers fan, so it made sense. But it was really like when Bryson said it was funny because Jaren was like, yeah, like LeBron's like, yeah, like LeBron is him. Like he's what like I think he even called LeBron the greatest player, but he's like, he's old. Like, and even Paul George agreed with the sentiment. But like, yeah, he was talking about it, like just the series. And I think part of like them being humble, because I think he even got, I won't say got it wrong. I think he said they got beat 4-1. They got obviously beat 4-2, but even then that just shows like he kind of like is I'm not say try to not for think about it, but just it's still there in some ways. Like because again, like he said, like they got done in May. Like they're not used to getting like, especially when you got done in like last year, I think late May or June. I forgot when. Like they got done, but like you're not used to going home this early, especially with how the last couple years have gone. So like to hear that perspective, I mean, I think even PG said it. Like, what did you learn from going against Anthony Davis? And I think he said like big things like tendencies and things of that nature, which I think was good for him because like I know again people talk about the series in negative context, but like there were a few games where Jaren actually outplayed Anthony Davis. Like, and even though they didn't match up, like he was showing like there was for the whole team and not just him, but for them in general, like or him in general, like they showed flashes of being good. Like it wasn't like they were just bad the whole series. They didn't lose the series 4-0 or nothing. It's just they weren't consistent enough to win it. But in that, you saw flashes of the teams, and you got to think they lost to a team that made it to the conference finals, like we've been said. It's not like they lost to a team that lost in the next round and got smacked. Like they lost to a team that had one of the greatest players on it, and then probably another dude who, when healthy, arguably is as good as the defender Jaren and one of the best bigs in the league. And our players almost basically won that series. Maybe they win this one game here or make a couple plays here or more shots here. You're talking about a different thing. So, and again, like I said, I think it will help them out because again, they had and not just like he said, not for just players, but just front office. Like it's going to help them going forward because they're still feeling it, so they're going to be motivated by it, especially going into next year. Like he said, they're going to be motivated by it. They're not even going to think about like the outside noise around them. More so just going to focus on, they're going to be more hungry like they used to be, which I think is a good thing. I think they always,
Definitely
for whatever
a good
reason,
thing.
yeah. Well, they always usually work in being like, I won't say the underdog, but they always work well when, I'm going to say not expectations, but just when they're a team that, they feel doubted or slighted. Like that's usually how they do. And I'm not saying they can't ever be a good team when they got expectations, because there will be expectations, obviously. But just when their mindset is like we're always slighted or something, they always seem to usually rise to the occasion. So I do think it'll be good for them. Obviously, I think, like I said, for Jaren especially, I think it's a good experience to go against AD and just LeBron. And I think, like he said, he's gonna learn from it. Like it's all part of the process because we've seen it with other players before where they get in the series against these top players before. And like I think even Paul was talking about it when he had to play like the Miami Heat when he was back in Indiana. Like he had to play them and go through that, and that helped him become a better player. So it's all part of the process in terms of getting better. So I think it's gonna be helpful for him.
Yeah, for sure. And then just kind of getting to some of the other parts of the podcast I found interesting. I really liked how both like Paul George and Jaren have both played with Steven Adams, and then kind of hearing them kind of go back and forth and talk about, how Steve-O is in the locker room and how he's brought this like sauna culture that apparently he started with Paul George in Oklahoma City. They brought it to the Grizzlies, and how like basically how Steven Adams is just like a freak of nature. And I thought that something that I thought was really interesting. They talked about how Steven Adams doesn't have like a workout plan. Like he just does his own. Like the trainers don't even do anything with him. Like he just does
Crazy.
whatever he does. And it's crazy because like, dude, the fact that first of all they have that much trust in him. But I mean, when you see him just continue to come back and one of the strongest players in the NBA, I'm sure that with the rehab and stuff, they've been with him a little bit more and everything like that. But whenever it comes to like his own workouts and everything, apparently like dude is jumping in and out of the pool with weights and stuff. Like it's ridiculous. Apparently we got to see one of these Steven Adams workouts. So I don't know if they're ever gonna like do a behind the scenes in the locker room or something. But apparently they're just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think when they were talking about it, who was it? Yeah, it was Jaren. He was talking about it, but Paul George noted it. Like one of his workouts was like, I think he was talking about like a bear crawl or something like that, and it seemed like Paul George knew exactly what he was talking about. I don't, because I don't know these workouts, even though as a guy that used to work out and play, like I don't. These workouts sound crazy. And again, Steven Adams is a big dude, like 6'11", 7 feet. I think if I'm looking right now, it's 265, like 270. Like he's a big dude. So like he's just doing crazy stuff, and it makes sense. Like it does make sense because Steven Adams is a different type of dude, like in a good way. Not no disrespect to Steven Adams, he's a different type of dude in a good way. Like just how he dress, obviously how he talk, like all that, how he act. But again, that's what makes Adams him, and that's why everybody really rocks with him, because like he is a different type of dude, but he is a good dude in the same time, in the same light. So those stories were funny, especially because like you said, when both people have played with him and the stories is kind of consistent, that kind of just shows how, or it makes it, for me, it makes it a little bit more funnier, because that dude's basically been the same dude ever since he stepped in the league, because he is like a vet now. I mean, because even though Steven Adams is like only 29, he is a vet. So like it's kind of crazy.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, he's kind of like Jaren, where they both kind of got drafted when they were still 18 years old. So I think that's the other thing about Jaren is like you look up, he's younger than somebody like Austin Reeves, who's going to be on the USA team with him, but he's got like 3 more years of experience on him, and it's just like stuff like that is kind of the same with Steven Adams, just because he got drafted so young too. But I thought that was really interesting. Another thing that I thought was interesting that they talked about was Jaren was talking about how he got a lot of his time in off of like 2K, and talking about how one of the reasons he's been able to develop touch was because the only thing his dad made him do was shoot hook shots and threes. He gave a little bit of insight of like what it was like growing up with an NBA father and kind of how he helped him and stuff like that. But I really think the best part to me was when he was kind of talking about the AAU stuff and talking about like some of those stories. And then the other story that was really funny was apparently that man had downloaded downloaded a pirated movie, and they had the FBI call on him when he was like in middle school or something, which that just is the most middle school thing that could happen. Because like honestly, that sounds like something that would happen to me. I was like, oh dude, I just thought this was Netflix. Like, I don't know. And yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. And then talking about like his mom, like, okay, but you got Scandal on there. Like, I thought that was pretty funny too. So there was like, if you haven't seen it, it was a really good episode. And then I thought Jaren, I thought he was like a really good interview. So I mean, if Jaren wants to ever come on this podcast, it sounds like he'd be an awesome interview, man. So
please, no, but yeah, no, I agree. I think it kind of, when hearing some of the stuff in the Jaren interview, it made me realize like it made a lot of sense. Like even he said it, like with his dad working, telling him to work on threes and layups or threes and hooks, because that's literally his game. Like I'm not trying to say that's like all he do, but offensively,
it's most of what he does.
Yeah, and I know people think that's like a bad thing to some degree, and where he was talking about like, oh, I've never been a leading scorer, but I think that's what made him and what he is now. Like that's why, like his dad saw the vision before he saw the vision. Like, because again, mind you, he had him because Jaren's he's like 23, so he's born in like let me see, 1999. So basically, his dad was already seeing the vision to some extent, like how the game was going in terms of like, okay, like I'm not saying like his son, like he didn't see, I don't know if he saw his son being a big man, but just he knew like, hey, if he has good touch and he can make threes, he at least got a baseline right there. Like he kind of saw the vision, and now that's what Jaren does. Like he's really big on being a modern big, being able to play inside out. So it kind of made it sense. And then obviously like the scoring thing, I think also kind of made sense because this is the most scoring like he's really ever had to really do. Like when you really think about it, like from when he was young, like he said, he never really had to score on these other teams. Not saying he was averaging like 8-7 points a game, but like he's always been more of a guy that's averaged probably 12, 14 points a night. Even if you go to his Michigan State days, he only averaged like 11 points. Like, and I think even in high school, you go look and that because I think that's kind of the thing with him. He's never been in that role. So I think, which is not a bad thing. I think now he's getting used to it. But I think that's a good thing now that because now you're basically having a player who's, like I said, does all the little things. And now you're starting to get a guy that could score the ball like that now. And I'm not going to say, before people hear me out on this comparison, I'm not saying he's him, but it's kind of the similar thing with how Kawhi kind of developed in the sense of Kawhi never was a big scorer his whole, like you go look at all his like years, especially early San Antonio, he's only averaging like 8-10 points, and even before that in college, he only averaged like 15. So he was never a big scorer, but those guys had to kind of grow into that and were forced to grow into that because of the situation they were in. And obviously Kawhi eventually became what Kawhi is, but I'm not saying Jaren will be that, but I'm saying he's getting more comfortable in being in that role and position. And so I think that's really going to be big for him. And it made a lot of sense as to why, because like when you're on those big teams, like it's like all-star teams, like for real. So like he didn't have to do much scoring wise. So I think it was really interesting to hear all that play out.
Yeah, he said there were some games where he didn't even feel like he went across half court just because they just kept getting steals and everything like that. And you're about 30, 40 points. And then he's just out there trying to get blocks at that point. And I was like, I just think that's really interesting that you get a guy that's averaging the most points he's ever averaged in his entire life when he gets to the NBA. Like, I know that the games are longer and everything, but I just think it's funny, how things kind of develop and he's become so much of a better scorer. And it's almost like he's learning that he can score at this level. Like as we are watching him and we're like figuring out what he can do on offense, like you're seeing him kind of learn what it is he can do. But the last thing we do have to talk about, I know we got a lot of stuff in about Jaren and everything like that, is the NBA Finals. Because I know this isn't Grizzlies related, but everybody's been watching the finals. Game 1 was really interesting. Nuggets came out, won by like 20. Well, I guess it was less interesting than game 2, obviously. But it's I think it's always funny how the series works, how somebody will come out in game 1 and everybody will be like, oh, it's a sweep. And then now everybody's back on the Miami bandwagon now that it's back tied to 1-1 after game 2. But my official prediction was going to be Nuggets in 6 or 7 before the series started. I just think the Nuggets are a better team, like overall. And with the way Jokic is playing and the way that Jamal Murray has been playing as the second guy, and then Aaron Gordon, like Aaron Gordon's been playing really well, and just like a really good supporting cast around Jokic, it just seems like everything for them was firing on all cylinders, kind of going into the postseason, sweeping the Lakers. I didn't think they were going to sweep the Heat. I saw some people saying it was going to be Nuggets in 4. I never really thought that, but I probably would have said Nuggets in 6 or 7, most likely, just for my prediction. And nothing I've seen in the first 2 games really is going to change that. I still think the Nuggets are the better team overall. I always knew it's going to be a lot tougher now because they don't have home court. I think that Denver home court advantage is really important because you have the extra altitude bonus as well. But like it's not going to be easy to beat Miami in Miami. And, Gabe Vincent was playing really well in that game too. They've kind of revitalized a little some of their role players that kind of struggled during the regular season. I've turned it on, like Max Strus and Duncan Robinson. And like I said, Gabe Vincent, like all these guys that were kind of up and down in the regular season. I've really just turned it around in the postseason and are playing their best ball at the right time. And, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo doing it too. So I think it's going to be a fun finals. Like I said, I'm taking Nuggets in probably 6 maybe 7 games. But I think it's going to be a lot more interesting than some people were saying.
I forgot what they were saying in terms of on the pod. Who was it? The on it was on the pod because they were talking about it on the pod. Paul George and them. I think he might have called it like it was like a split. And personally, I think for me, I thought Nuggets were gonna go up 2-0, but I do think Miami did play a really good game in game 2. But I think for me, I still got Nuggets in like, let me think, probably 5 or 6 I had before the series. And I think probably, like you said, it probably closer to 6 or 7 at this point. Because I think, again, like you said, with the home court, for me with the Nuggets, it's kind of like now they kind of have to, their role players, I'm going to say been shaky on the road, but they've kind of been in the sense of like MPJ and Aaron Gordon have kind of basically been the guys that have been in question on the road in terms of previous other series. So I think that's kind of be the big thing, especially with MPJ, is how he's going to be able to bounce back from the game that he just had. But I think the margin of error for the Nuggets kind of still big because that's the thing with Miami. Like Miami has been a team that's really been like you said, they role players have been revitalized. That's why this is like such an anomaly in a way. Because the reason why I say that is like a lot of these guys weren't getting a lot of time in the regular season. A lot of these guys weren't making as many shots. Like Caleb Martin was averaging like 20 in the conference finals. Like that's just an anomaly in itself. And that's not in disrespect. Like this is a special run. But I think that's the thing that like they had a lot of things go right for them that game too. And so for me, it's like, can they keep that going? Like their margin, I always say it. You know, I've been saying this. If y'all listen, margin of error. I always use margin of error because that's how you have to go off things. Because if this thing goes wrong, can you combat that or can you overcome it and compensate for it in other ways? And when I think about game 2, I think the Nuggets had a lot of things go wrong for them, and then Miami had a lot of things go right. And that's not saying Denver's not gonna, just all of a sudden just come and win these both games. But I think they should still feel good in that sense, is because they are best player. I mean, he had uncharacteristic turnovers. The whole team did. They had a few undisciplined fouls in game 2. Like I think KCP fouled Gabe Vincent and somebody else on 3-point shots and gave him 3 free throws. Like little stuff like that. And then they had miscommunications that gave up like 10 straight points damn near to Duncan Robinson. Like it's little stuff that they had. I think even KCP touched on it. I saw a little clip today. They played a bad game and they almost still won it. And I kind of agree.
I mean, yeah, they were Jamal Murray, making that shot away from it going to overtime. Which, yeah, for Jamal, the way he's been playing, that's a good look too. For a lot of guys, that's a bad shot. For him, that's a good look right now. Like it almost went down. Like it was a really good look. So, like I see what you're saying, like with the margin of error and everything. And I think part of the reason why the margin of error is so low for them, or is so much like higher, I feel like just overall, is because of freaking Nikola Jokic. Like the way that dude has been playing, especially like he can either go for 40 or he'll just have a 25-point triple double, based on kind of how he's feeling that day and kind of how the flow of the game goes. I think that is something I think was interesting too, is that the Heat did a lot better job in that game too of making Jokic be the only one that was really doing anything. And I'll always say, and I think it's like basically the basic takeaway you can take from any time the Nuggets are playing is you can let Jokic get points or you can let him like get the assist. You can't let him do both. If he's going out there and he has one of those like 25-point, 13 assist games, you're probably going to lose. If he goes out there and has 40 and then doesn't do as much in like the assist department, you might have a better chance. Or, if he just has an off night and he's just passing a lot more, you also have a chance. But you can't let him have one of those, 32, 10, and 13. Like you can't let that happen. That's really kind of what Miami did. I think they did a good job of slowing down everybody else. Because Jokic has been playing awesome, but then like Jamal Murray was averaging 30 a game in the Western Conference Finals. Michael Porter Jr. has had his moments. KCP has had his moments. Aaron Gordon had that crazy beginning to game one of the finals where, first finals game ever, and he just came out, and really set the tone. So it's like there's a lot of these guys that have been really important to the team, and they kind of took them away in game two and kind of made it all be on Jokic. And Jokic is so good that they still almost lost the game. Miami still almost lost when that happened. But I think it just shows that overall, I think they have a better team. Their team is constructed a little bit better. They don't have the injury concerns that kind of the Heat have had, even with the guys that are healthy, because Jimmy's been dealing with some stuff and everything like that as well. So I think like the Nuggets are probably the safe pick. The Heat, I feel like, are kind of like the America's team kind of thing going on, where everybody's kind of cheering for them because they're kind of the underdog. They came in the 8 seed, they were to play in and everything. So it would be an awesome story if they ended up winning. And I don't want to, I like, just to be clear, I don't have a rooting interest in either of these teams. I think that either of these teams winning would be an awesome storyline for basketball. Somebody's going to win their first finals MVP, regardless of what team it is. And just continuing of I don't know if it's really passing the torch to the young guys, but kind of passing the torch to some of the new veteran guys. Because, Jokic isn't really a young guy anymore. Jimmy isn't really a young guy anymore. But, Steph, LeBron, and KD were basically just winning, and Kawhi won basically every finals MVP for it felt like, 7 or 8 years? So it's kind of like this new group is finally getting a chance to kind of make their mark when it comes to final stuff. So whether it's Jokic, whether it's Jimmy Butler, who ends up getting finals MVP, whether it's the Heat or the Nuggets, I think it'll just be awesome. Especially for the Nuggets, it will be their first ever in franchise history. And, that would be cool for them too. So I really don't have a rooting interest in this. Like I said, I'd probably go with the Nuggets just from a basketball standpoint, who I think is going to win. But I mean, it's very possible that Miami wins this series too. Like, I would not be surprised at all if they ended up coming back and winning it. Well, not really coming back, but if they ended up winning this series.
Yeah. Like you said, in terms of, to get back to what you're talking about in terms of the game plan, I forgot to mention, they want to make Jokic a score. I know if y'all saw Eric Spoelstra's thing where he was talking to, I think it was Ramona Shelburne, and he's talking about untrained eye. He was just trying to give credit to, he knows that he don't want to give bulletin board material to the Nuggets. Like, he don't want to do that. That was their game plan. Even Steve Kerr said it. Their game plan was, we're going to make Jokic a scorer and basically take everybody else out of rhythm. Because like you said, with them, Jamal Murray's kind of their engine. Like, Jokic is going to do his thing, but you don't want to let Murray get off. So they did that. And I will say, them making an adjustment with that, also putting, I think, who was it, Kevin Love in the lineup. Like, they did a few different things that worked out for them. And obviously, again, for them, it's just about making shots and not turning the ball over and then making Jokic score. I think it was like their main 3 things for them to really have a chance to really win. Because like you said, they can still win. Like, they can win this. Like, I know folks not thinking they can, but like they've done the most impossible thing. Like, they're the second 8 seed to make the finals. Like, when you can't just discredit them in terms of them winning this whole thing. Like, it'll be fun. Like you said, to your point about this being like a new passing of the torch, it's more so just parity. Like, this will be, I think there was a stat that was like a week or 2 ago I saw it. Basically, this is the 3rd or 4th time where like a different team, like the 6th or 7th year in a row, has won it. And the last time it was like that, it was like the 70s or 80s. Like, it was something like that. Like, some stat where we hadn't seen that. Because usually, like you said, it's usually either the same team or same player winning it 5 out of 8 years, or 9 out of 10 years. Like, that's usually how it is. Like you said, it was like Steph, it was like LeBron, it was like Kawhi here, then like a Giannis here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was different. You know what I mean? And so now you're kind of seeing that age, because now the league is, like I always said, the league is the most talented it's ever been now. So like, how you build teams and how your teams are going to be is totally different. Now, I'm not saying you now again with Miami, they're an anomaly. Just because teams are more competitive, you still need to be more like the Denver type teams where you're winning a lot more in regular season. Like, regular season still matters. But I'm saying, like, there's a lot of teams that can win it. Because, I mean, people had Denver as a contender, but people didn't really, like, believe in them like they should have been, when they clearly showed they should have been believed as a contender the whole time. But, like, again, like, I wouldn't be surprised if next year another different team wins it. Like that's how close the league is with talent. Like you can't just win having one good player, even though it's a player driven. Like your stars drive it. You need to build full teams now. Like Denver has a good team. Like Miami has a good solid team. You have to have all that, like good coaching, like all of it matters. You can't have anything that kind of lacks. And if you do, you have to be able to compensate for it. So I think this is what it is, parity. And I mean, I'm here for it. I've been said parity is good for the league, especially when you've seen other leagues have parity, like for example, like the NFL, where usually it's hard to repeat in that. And obviously for them, that has worked. And I think it will work for the league now because, for the NBA, is because this league is so full with talent. Like Jokic, like again, like he's a new player. Like I have no rooting interest in this. Like I picked Denver, but I would not gonna be mad either way. Like I'm a hoop fan, so like I love this. Like some teams gonna win. Like some people are gonna win their first championship. Like that's dope. Like it's either gonna be the Nuggets who win their first finals, or it's gonna be Jimmy winning his first ring, Bam winning his first ring, Spo gonna win like what? He's like third? No, yeah, like third or fourth. Yeah, third or fourth ring. Like he's gonna be like these guys are gonna win. Like like it's gonna be new. It's gonna be new, and I think it's good. I think it's good for the league for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I like what you said about the parity thing too. And I think the talent in the league is definitely at an all-time high and everything like that. And I think you're just going to continue to see that. It's going to be really interesting. I know people have been talking about maybe the NBA expanding. I think it will be interesting to see what happens after that because I think the parity after that would just be even greater, because they're only going to let you probably protect like 6 or 7 guys or 7 or 8 guys. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, parity's at its best, and I mean, you got a 1 seed playing the 8 seed, and it's not the first round; it's the last round, it's the finals. Like that's usually like a first round matchup. So it's just anybody can really make it now at this point, especially with like the 3 ball being so important now. You got teams that if you get hot for a couple games in a row, you might be able to pull an upset and kind of stuff like that. But yeah, awesome finals. I'm very excited to see what continues to happen with that. And we're going to keep talking about it as it keeps going on, as well as the other Grizzlies news that we're going to be coming out over the next week. But that's all for this week's episode of the Next Gen Podcast on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. We will see y'all on the next one. I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and for Alex Winton, we'll see y'all later.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Gen Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and a comment wherever you download your podcasts. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co, where you will find comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports and how you can become an insider. We'll see you back here next time.